Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks, I am really excited today because I am chatting with Deborah, who I met recently at a networking event, and I was just blown away at her personal story. It was very inspiring to me, and I coerced her to conduct this interview because I think it's a story that we can all gain inspiration from. So, Deborah, first off, thanks for spending time with me today.
Well, thanks, Steve, for being so interested in what I thought was my little story. I'm happy to chat with you about how I got here and what it has meant to me. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. So let's start with just a brief background. Background on you and your family, and maybe a little bit about let's start with a little bit of that, and then I know that we're going to lead into some healthcare challenges that your family faced, but let's get a little bit of background on what your family looks like.
Sure. I am a 30-year resident of Northern Virginia, but I grew up in northern New York and lived for quite a while in Rochester. My husband and I and our two small children moved to Springfield when my kids were little, and we discovered a great place for careers and a great place to raise family. I have about a 40-year work history in just a wide variety of communications related work, publications management, PR, media relations, a lot of writing, and I ended my career with a big trade association managing large events and training events plus membership. So my husband was diagnosed in, I think it was 2014, with a kind of Parkinson's, a rare kind of Parkinson's called multiple system atrophy. And it became quite evident that I couldn't travel anymore. My work required a fair bit of travel, managing large events and training events. And so that was the first step back for me. And as time went on, not much time, frankly, it was clear I had to retire. So, boy, my husband put up a heck of a fight. You know, he worked hard to stay mobile and stay present, but regrettably, really painfully for my family, multiple system atrophy is just that. You know, things started to break down for him, and the tipping point for his illness was his loss of what neurologists call executive functions. He couldn't track a small task through its individual steps, and he had been a process analyst, worked for NASA for quite a long time, and he just couldn't work
Yeah.
anymore, and then he just couldn't stay by himself anymore. So I retired in 2019.
And what did that caregiving look like when it became, well, it
Right.
progressed obviously,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
what did that look like? Was it 100% you and the family, or did you utilize any outside resources?
Well, we did. Um, uh, what his disease looked like was a gradual and then quite a sudden loss of the finer points of mobility. Um, and then, as I mentioned, the big loss of that ability to think through steps in a process. Um, the outside resources we used at first of all, he had fantastic medical care. We just couldn't have asked for better. A great neurologist who is a movement specialist, um, a great cardiologist, and a bunch of other appointments because, as I said, system breakdown is system breakdown. Um, he went to, he walked every day for as long as he could. He went to a boxing class for people with Parkinson's, which he loved. He took communications therapy so he could continue to talk and swallow for as long as that was he was able. But things really took a nosedive, and COVID was frankly a mixed blessing for us because my son was able to stay at home and help me with care. We had hospice, but boy, you don't know the actual work that's required until you are in the middle of it. He couldn't shave himself. He couldn't feed himself. When he became bedbound, we set our alarm for every 2 hours, got up and moved him so he wouldn't, his skin wouldn't deteriorate. And I think that lasted. We did have hospice care, but we were able to have him stay at home until he passed away in 2021. I never, ever could have done it without the help of my children, and they're adults, of course, but everybody found a way to support him, even if it was just helping him listen to his favorite music or getting his favorite ice cream or making sure that his skin stayed in good condition, or just sitting with him. It was a tough go for him, but I have to say it was a privilege to care for him at home.
Man, thanks for sharing that journey. I know it's not easy to recount that, but how and obviously then you and your family had to go through the grieving process, and that's different for everyone. But as you reflect on this caregiving experience with your husband, um, how do you think it changed you, and did it did it change your perspective on how you're living your life now?
Well, a couple of things happened in addition to just the horrible experience of that just excruciating process. And losing a spouse, whether it's sudden or over time, that's nobody gets over that. but that steady daily slide was hard. But as you rightly point out, it gives you a chance to reflect on your own, your own life going forward. A couple things happened, as I mentioned. The first thing that happened was a friend had given me a book that I didn't really have time to read until my husband had passed away. The book was called 4,000 Weeks by a fellow named Oliver Burkeman. There you go. There it is.
Yeah. You recommended it to me, and I've started reading it. It's wonderful.
It's an easy read, but an insightful read for me. Everybody takes away something different from a book like that. My three takeaways were, the first is to do something for my bigger purpose, whatever that meant. The second was to do something for someone I didn't know every day. I'll rewind. Do something for my bigger purpose every day. Do something for someone else, someone I didn't know, every day. And the third is to do something for myself every day. It took me a while to figure out what those three things meant to me. And my own light bulb went off when I had an opportunity to check in with my neighbor right next door, who also lost her husband. This is going to be kind of a long story, but I'll try to get through it quickly. I took her a sympathy card because I knew her husband had died actually 3 or 4 months before mine did. And it took a long time for her to get to the door. When she got there, she was clearly compromised. And I realized that she needed someone to look in on her, I thought, from time to time. And over time, that took every day. And so it began to kind of dawn on me that I was kind of nibbling around at those three things, right? A greater purpose, which is to pay attention to my own community, and do something for someone I didn't know. Even though we had neighbors, we weren't really friends. But it was clear she needed someone to check in on her. And then that activity plus the 4,000 weeks began to really define, my chapter, right? Whatever my chapter was going to be. And so I began to kind of actively practice all of that. And I realized that, I could buy coffee for the person behind me in line, or I could let somebody go ahead of me at the grocery store, or those kinds of things. But it didn't really have, it was a momentary event. So my neighbor became too ill. I wound up seeing my neighbor every day, helping her get to doctor's appointments, helping her get her hair done, making sure that she had clean laundry. If I went to the grocery store, I took her list with me. I always, tried to make sure that she was eating well, but her life got smaller and smaller, and finally was just sort of a arm's length existence around her recliner. And she called me, about 4 a.m, she had been sick all night. She was clearly in trouble. And so I made sure she, called the ambulance, stayed with her in the hospital, and she had to be admitted to assisted living. So I did all that process with her, and her family. She had one daughter who lived in New Hampshire, and so she needed more help than just checking in on her every day. And during that whole process, I promised her that I would take care of her home. She didn't want anybody to roll up a dumpster and just start throwing stuff away. So I promised her I would take care of her home, and it took me a fair bit. But I, over the course of a month, I emptied her home and got it ready for her to hand off to her daughter and eventually put on the market. And as I was on my way out of I'm sorry this story is so long.
Oh, no, I love this story. And I'll tell you, Deborah, a couple of the reasons why I love it is that the number one discussion topic on our platform is solo aging. And your neighbor really represents a solo ager. Even though she's got a daughter in New Hampshire and she's got family, she needed some support, and that's not coming from a traditional network. And the fact that you stepped up and provided that support with all the other neighbors around. I mean, that you were drawn for whatever reason to support her is, I just think, beautiful. And and there's so many people out there like your neighbor, that if each of us can just sort of live by the principles of 4,000 weeks, whatever that means to us, and just lend a helping hand, and reach out. It's just a beautiful story, Deborah.
Well, I'm equal parts embarrassed and flattered. It's difficult. It's difficult for people who have been independent to ask for help. It was difficult for my neighbor to, sort of let me get past her front door. She was embarrassed because she couldn't take care of her home. She was alone, and she thought she liked it that way. And so the process of showing her she could trust me and that I would respect her privacy and the way she chose to live her life, it can be hard. It's hard to give and it's hard to get. So I was on my way out of. Unfortunately, my neighbor died after 6 weeks of being in an assisted living community. I was on my way out of my neighborhood with one of the last donations for a group nearby, and I drove past a big van that said White Glove Solution on the side. And I thought, well, that was kind of interesting. And I thought, driving down the road, I bet those guys do what I just did for my neighbor. So I turned around and came back and saw this guy getting into his van, and I asked him, I said, what do you fellas do? And he gave me a package of information, and we talked a little bit there in the street. And it turns out that they do a fair bit of what I had done for my neighbor. So, I talked it over with my kids because I'm retired, and it turns out I wasn't very good at being retired. I didn't have enough to do. And I had those three principles that were sort of rattling around in my head: my greater purpose, doing something for someone I don't know, and doing something for myself. So I chatted with him a little more and got to know a little more about his values and the company that he and his son helped put together. And I learned what move management means, that it is a whole process for helping elder Americans take stock of their lives and find a place, if need be, to relocate, or to, making modifications in their home so they can age in place. And he offered me a job, and I took it. And it turns out that I don't have to check those three boxes one at a time. I can check them all at the same time. So it's I have discovered that one of my greater purposes is connecting with people who, frankly, look like me. They're retired. They often live by themselves. Their children are grown. They're aging out of their homes in many cases, and that's a greater purpose for me.
I love it.
Yeah, I can do something for someone I don't know. I have a sort of a visceral connection with White Gloves clients, but I don't really know these folks. But what happens in many cases is their lives are transformed by the kind of support that they get from White Glove. And I'll give you an example. I was just part of a crew that helped a woman relocate from Hampton, Virginia to Northern Virginia. She had been in this home 50 years, Steve. She had close ties with her church. She had close ties with her neighbors. But for a bunch of reasons, she could not live by herself any longer. And so the care and respect and affection that the team I was part of showed her over the course of her relocation was, on a personal level, extremely rewarding. She's sad, but we didn't just throw her stuff in boxes and slam it onto a truck. Tremendous care given to the life that she had there and the new life that she has just started in closer to her family. That's transformational. That's not buying a cup of coffee for the person behind you in line. Mm-hmm. That's a real contribution to an 80-year-old person who needed to have a different life. And I don't know, I don't know that it gets, for me, that doesn't get better than that, honestly.
Oh, I love it. I tell you, the moment that I met you, and we just were having some small talk at the event that we were at.
Yeah.
I was just blown away, and I didn't know the whole story until now. And Deborah, I think that that your story is an inspiration, but it's one that we can all live, and it can be customized to each of our comfort level, our time, our resources. But you really, in telling this, you've got me thinking about my own life, and that's my goal. Is that I know you don't want to be put on a pedestal, uh, but but what I think you want to do is make an impact in other people's lives, and I think by telling your journey, um, it can get people thinking outside of the box at uh, what what their journey might look like. And, you know, one of the things, Deborah, like you talked about your career before your husband's healthcare changes
Yes.
and being a caregiver and
Yes.
caring for your neighbor. Um, and it sounded very meaningful, but also very corporate.
Yeah.
I mean, um,
Yep.
I think I'm curious, do you ever reflect on the impact that you made prior to your husband's healthcare changes and the impact that you're making now?
Well, it was corporate in lots of ways, but over 40 years, you get to do a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
right? And I was very fortunate that I spent my career in nonprofits. I worked for a university. I worked for a children's literacy organization. I worked for a couple of education associations. And those those organizations are very mission driven. No organization wants to go out of business because they run out of money. So there was always an eye on, do we have the money we need to carry out our mission? And so I'm very fortunate that my career didn't focus on just generating revenue or contributing to revenue, that there was a deeper
higher calling.
Yes. Which in retrospect, I can see was important in how I managed my career. The last place I worked was more corporate than the others, although you can apply corporate principles to a university, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it was quite different in its purpose. And as a trade, my job at the trade association first was in publications development and management, and so there was always an element of connection and information that I loved. And then it ended with big and small event management and taking care of its membership. And so I knew that the work we were doing advanced a really important social initiative for me, really important for me, which is public transportation. And the idea that public transportation can, it's a big job engine, it's a sustainability initiative, it contributes to environmental integrity, and that, people who work in that arena sort of have those same values. Every organization needs to be financially stable or they don't last, but bigger mission at work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. No, I think what I was recognizing, and I'm glad you dove a little bit deeper here, because while your profession was was more corporate than what you're doing now, where
No
you're helping one-on-one with families and individuals. It helped. It fits. Everything's in alignment here, and the skills that you no doubtedly developed there in the corporate world are helping you in this new chapter. But
You bet.
it's you are definitely feet on the street and impacting people's lives in this new role that you've chosen. And it's, to me, it's exciting. It's something to be proud of, and it's something for us all to kind of look and scratch our heads and wonder, okay, what path do I have in front of my life, and
Yep.
what is important to me? So this is great.
Oh,
Deborah,
thank you.
this has been an amazing discussion. I hope it's just the first of many. And it before we wrap this one up, is there anything that you'd want to share with me or our community that you haven't had a chance to chat about today?
Well, mostly, uh, mostly, it's really, really hard to break the mold. And when I was working, I went to work and I came home, right? And that's kind of it. You know, I had friends, but I had two things to take care of: my job and my home, my family. But if you can just knock on a door and see how the person who lives down the street, around the corner, are they okay? Are they doing okay? Can you buy them a quart of milk at the grocery store? Um, Nothing is more rewarding than plugging into the people. Nothing was more rewarding for me than plugging into the people around you, especially my neighbor, and connecting on a person-to-person level in a way that made a difference to her and also made a really big difference to me. Yeah.
I love it. And yeah, I agree that if we can each just do a little bit, it might not be as long term or as much as
Right.
what you've done, but just a little bit, and just asking, even, because it's also really important. I loved how you illustrated that um as hard as it is to go and knock on that door, it's also really hard for us, especially folks that have lived independent lives where
Yep.
they've taken care of everything, to accept that help. And
Yeah,
it's
it is.
everybody's different, but it can be a little bit of a different dance for everybody. But you've illustrated this beautifully. I'm thrilled that you found such a meaningful role, and I'm also delighted that you introduced me to this book. And and folks, 4,000 weeks is the essentially our lifespan. I believe if we live to about 80. And
Right.
I did the calculation after you told me about this book, and I'm into about 3,000 some odd weeks in my
The
life.
clock ticks.
And that,
The clock ticks.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
really gives
Yeah.
meaning that I've got less than 1,000 weeks. Yeah. And there's something about that creates a sense of urgency to live every day. I really like how the author has framed this.
I agree. And it's a realization that, you know, you can look back and take stock, or you can look forward and you know, move along. And I'm not gonna spend my week sitting on my sofa.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Deborah, thanks so much, and I look
Thank
forward
you,
to talking
Steve.
to you again.
Thank
You bet.
you so much. Appreciate everything. Thank you.
You bet.